Welcome to Freedom at the Top, the podcast where professionals from various industries come together to share their journey towards reaching peak potential. I'm your host, Rafael Ramos, and I'm excited to dive into insightful conversations with our guests. With Eagle Summit Equity, this podcast aims to inspire and empower you to reach new heights in your personal and professional life. So sit back, relax, and let's enjoy the journey towards freedom at the top. We're honored to have Christopher Lum Lee today on the Freedom at the Top podcast. About Christopher, he's a guy who does a lot of things. He's the owner of TriSec Inc., a private security service. He is also the vice chair of the City and County of Honolulu's Workforce Development Board and a member of the State of Hawaii Correctional Industries Advisory Committee. He was also has been a real estate investor, originally in single-family properties and now as a private money lender. Thank you very much, Chris, for being on the podcast and show. May you please share more about yourself and your journey?
So my journey has been very windy. There's been a lot of pivots, a lot of turns and things like that. So originally in my professional career, I started as kind of more of a career civil servant. So I spent 8.5 years working in service programs, doing budget analyses, very briefly did a little bit of property management. On the side, I was also doing my own investing. Typically when I first started, I was doing a lot of stock investments, things like that, and then was always interested in the real estate investments as well. And I think when you're growing up younger, you think real estate investors are for high net worth or really wealthy people. But eventually, I was able to find my way into the single family space with pretty decently low price ranges in Memphis, Tennessee, where I had some properties. I had single family properties, and then when the prices got really high, I was able to sell those properties, took the additional cash and then deployed it into private money loans for our local real estate investors for their projects that they're doing. So eventually I left government and then started my business. And additionally, with some of the excess profits that we were doing, we started also investing with that vehicle. Initially, we started with fixed income securities, mortgage-backed bonds, general obligation bonds, corporate bonds, and then now we're also getting into private money lending through that vehicle. So that's something that I'm very excited about us moving into we're putting more emphasis on and going into the future.
Wow. Thank you very much for sharing how you became in the industry and just a total in this whole area. You have your own business and even just going further to go into the lending space as well. May you share more a bit why you wanted to go into single family and the specific market, and also a little bit more about like asset management and lending and other investment vehicles as well.
I think when I got into real estate investing, I thought I was kind of sold on the prospect of passive income by rental property. Your tenants pay your mortgage, everything's great. You take a little off the top, and then that's your passive income. But as I spent a little bit of time in the single family space, I found that active real estate investing, even as buy and hold, and the myth of passive income, there's nothing passive about it, right? Because even if you are investing just for rental income, you still have to deal with tenant issues, you still have to deal with property management issues. So after a couple of years, just so happens at the same time, my tenants vacated the properties, leaving this giant rent-ready bill. And in my limited knowledge and experience at the time of getting the properties, I did not factor in that you should have a reserve set aside even before you have the property acquired for things like your capex and your maintenance and things like that. So by the time I got those rent-ready bills, that was way more than I had from the set-asides and the reserves from the rents over the few years that I had those properties. So once I So that's when I decided to get out of it, not deal with the headache of dealing with tenants or property managers. And then I was able to deploy the capital into the private money loans. And I figured let the real estate investors deal with the headache of it. But the reason I got into the single family space is because of the price points. And single family space is particularly in the area that I was in Memphis, Tennessee. You could find properties at the time for 40, 50,000 that were renting for about 850 a month.
Oh, wow.
So you pretty much blew past the 1% rule right there.
Mm-hmm.
So and as I learned about real estate investing over the time, the typical trajectory was that you get one single family property, then you save up for your down payment for your second single family property, and then you keep going until you max out at the 10, and then you go into commercial. As I went through that process of learning about different real estate strategies, that's when you begin to learn about things like BRRRR or the other strategies like fix and flip or using other people's money to finance your properties. Then I've realized that you're not limited to 10 if you use certain strategies like BRRRR or private money lending.
Mm-hmm.
So ideally at some point, if I go back to being an active real estate investor, I may start with a single family, or I may just go right into the multifamily space, depending on price points, depending on needs of the properties. The reason I got into Memphis was that was very haphazard in the sense that I remember looking on Bigger Pockets and just checking the different forums and seeing what people were talking about, which markets and things like that.
Uh-huh.
And Memphis kept coming up. So then I started looking at price points. I started looking at the discussion that was taking place in the different forums or blogs about Memphis. And I just said that, okay, this is really worth a look. I started talking to one of the property management companies out there who also has an attachment to a brokerage. Talked to the broker, put out a few blog posts, or not blog posts, I should say, message forum posts asking what the general consensus on the zip code, on price points, on just the city as a whole. There was a lot of good feedback at the time. So that's when I pulled the trigger to jump in.
Wow. Thank you, Chris. Through your whole journey here, Chris shared a lot of value where he did learn from his experience and wisdom where, okay, he went through his properties, but okay, learning going forward, you do need to have some leeway, some reserves with your properties, just in case, either you have like tenants moving out, you have things you have to fix. So that's one great value Chris shared here. Next is definitely going and knowing what your exit strategy is. Like Chris, when you shared, wow, you just went from a nice segue from, okay, I want to go into single family homes and then want to do asset management and different financial investments, different areas, but you're looking for what's your exit strategy and where do you want to put your hard-earned money and where, like such as private lending. So that's a great value there. And number three, great takeaways. Okay, find a great network like Bigger Pockets. It is free and there is, I believe, the premium option. But yeah, you do have a network where people generally provide value and you help each other as well. So definitely find a great network. So thank you, Chris, on that. Let's see, want to dig in further, going through learning from your single family and just family properties and learning like the full cycle of owning them motivated you to, okay, let's look at private lending and then focus on other things in your business.
So just so I'm clear, your question is what motivated me to go into the private money lending side?
Yes.
Okay. So I got into private money lending because once I sold the properties, the other alternatives were keep it in cash. But by that point, the interest rates weren't where they are now. So you weren't really getting anything out of that, any return on that cash just sitting around. or I could put it in the stock market. But then you have questions, okay, what sector or what type of stock? Are they going to put it
Hmm.
in REITs, BDCs, MLPs, such and such? But then eventually through bigger pockets, like you were talking about building a network, that's how I got segued into meeting the local real estate investors here because there was a community here. And then it was actually the WNN properties people who I met. So I think
Nice.
I actually originally met CJ and Jasmine through bigger pockets. And then at the time they were holding their meetups at the UPS store in Kapolei.
Hmm.
So I started going to those events. And then after CJ and Jasmine transitioned out and then turned it over to the mentors of WNN properties, and I continued to spend time with them. They were talking about the need for private money lending, and that's how I really got into private money lending. I'd still lent out to a couple of other investors for different projects that they were doing locally. One of them is a local build up and flipper. But through the WNN group, that's where I got access to more deals and more lending opportunities.
Nice, nice. Thank you, Chris. Um, you did mention involving your journey. Sometimes it's not always linear, or you go different directions. Maybe to just share like an instance where, okay, you had an expectation, you wanted to go straight forward, but yeah, just an event that made you go a different direction. Maybe please share like one instance, and yeah, what's the great learning lesson from that event?
What I'll say is, I'll give you well, to illustrate a point that I want to make. So before I left the city, I spent 2 years as a budget analyst. And one of the things that I really learned in that role is how to ask questions. It's very easy to ask superficial questions based on information in front of you,
Hmm.
but if you really want to get into the weeds and learning mechanics of things, that's when you have to learn to anticipate your questions you're going to ask, in that you have to know if you're going to get this particular answer, you're going to have to ask this set of questions. If you're going to get another type of answer, you're going to have to ask another set of questions. Now, just so happens one of the departments that I was assigned to work in with was the city's new land management department. And at the time I was I was working with my departments and learning new things about all the departments. And just at that time, I was already starting to get into real estate investing.
Uh-huh.
So I had gotten recruited to go to the land management department. And while I was at land management department, I didn't know anything really about properties. I got brought in over there to be a property manager of managers, so more contract oversight.
Uh-huh.
But while I was there, because it was still a new department, they were bringing people in from other city departments to fill the roles there. And we really got to visit the different city properties, look at the different problems, the types of property we're having, whether it be structural, whether it be property management based, tenant based, anything really physically with the structure. So there were a lot of things that I did not know, that I had to ask a lot of questions about and I had to really learn about. I had to learn about foundation issues. I had to learn about spalling. As an example, I had to learn about irrigation lines under the buildings. A lot of things that I did not know,
Hmm.
which really helped me think more about the properties that I was holding and the types of issues that I would look at when reviewing real estate transactions or deals in my own personal investing. So the reason I kind of talk about this story is because I think you think that you're going to spend so much time in one field, one job, but then it just so randomly happens that you get pivoted into this other direction. But had you not ended up in this way, then other things would not have followed or would not have worked out better than had you not gone in that direction in the first place. So I think, as I like to say, it's a damnedest thing, really.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Yeah, very helpful, because I can definitely relate where, okay, you do expect to be in one area um, or career, and along the way you're learning um, even learning what you don't know, and it will definitely help you like apply those skills for places like real estate investing, like or being an entrepreneur, which is very great but unexpected. So yeah, it's a interesting journey, and I can definitely relate again where okay, I wanted to be in one industry before right after school and college, but ended up a different journey where okay, I want to be successful here at point A, but okay, it's not working out, but it leads you somehow to like point B. So yeah, I appreciate your journey, Chris. Thank you for tuning in to Freedom at the Top by Eagle Summit Equity. Have you considered how your money can work for you? Explore more about financial and passive investing on your terms. Enjoy freedom on your time with family and life. Visit eaglesummitequity.com today. Let's go into what you shared about your achievements. So we have wanted to share three areas. So first, can you uh, go into discussing about incorporating your private security company and like how that came to be?
It was a hassle, if I could be so blunt about it.
Uh-huh.
So the reason it really started was while I was working for the state and the city, I was also doing security work on the side,
Mm-hmm.
you know, beer money kind of thing, right? And eventually, the company that I was with was going to terminate the contract of the property that we were working at, and we got asked to take over the contract, and I said we need some time. So we had a very limited amount of time while that contract was about to be terminated. So within a matter of days, I had to incorporate. I had to set up. I had to get an accountant. I had to set up payroll. I had to find somebody who had the licenses that I needed. All sorts of moving parts just to get the business set up to take over the contract. So that was, and then even to this day, there's still, and that was a bit over 4 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And there's still a lot of things that I'm still working on adding or building within business infrastructure, I should say. So as far as the business goes, we do not only security, but we also do a little bit of consulting.
Mm-hmm.
We do the security guard training for everybody who has to get their state of Hawaii guard license. And then we haven't even talked about the investment part yet. So just all that was keeping me very busy and very active for the last 4 years.
Wow. I'm mind blown. Like within less than a week, so all of that to start your company, that that's amazing. Let's go into about adding the asset management function to your business as well. Like how is that going?
It's so far it's so good. Obviously I think I could be a little more aggressive in really building that out,
Uh-huh.
but I by nature am fairly cautious and fairly conservative just financially. So I'm not taking a hugely aggressive approach to doing it. The reason we started doing that really was as a way of generating additional revenue for the business so we could afford to do things like pay our employees licensing fees, for example, or pay for other expenses that the other security companies weren't doing. So after probably the first year or so of doing that, I kind of was driving one day and thinking to myself, why don't I just make this an actual, instead of using it as a supplementary income source for the business, why not just go and make this an asset management holder? So that's when I kind of picked up pace a little bit and started purchasing those investments and those securities. And then because I had personally run out of funds for private money lending, but somebody had still asked about getting funds, that's when I turned to the business. We drew up promissory notes for the business, and then
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, maybe we can we can probably make this a more a continuous thing. So that's how that came to be.
Wow.
But yeah, the other thing that I'm playing with, and
Uh-huh.
I still need to figure out how to do it, is I think what would be cool to do with it is to use it as a vehicle or as a way for people who don't have the minimums to invest with through private money lending, as kind of a medium to get people who don't have those funds to sort of hui up for a loan to be made to a real estate investor. So for example, a lot of local investors that I know, their minimums are either 25 or 50 or even more than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of people I know have 25 or 50,000 sitting in a checking account, but people may have 100 or 1,000 or even 5,000. Maybe there's a way to get to those people, aggregate it, and then do a direct loan through my business. But that's something that's still being looked at. Numbers are being analyzed right now to see if that's even feasible, because when you look at the business perspective, right, you can get a private money loan. You can lend on a private money loan anywhere between 8 and 12%, give or take, depending who the borrower is.
Yes.
But once you get the profits, you got to pay 4.712% GE tax right off the top. And then, of course, because everybody who's coming in to help pull up the funds to make this real estate loan, you have to give them a cut. Obviously, you can't give them 8 to 12% because you've already lost just under 5% on the GE tax. So you have to cut them in a little bit lower. But to make to make it competitive, you want to be higher than the bank rates. So there's a little bit of number crunching to see if that's even feasible to go that route.
Yeah, I hope there's a way. There definitely has to be some way, either through partnership or other setup. But yeah, I hope you'll find the answer sometime soon as well. And then lastly, the third achievement. May you feel free to discuss more about the private money lending space as well. How you achieve or successes there.
Yeah, the private money lending space has been very. I'd like to say I've done well with it in terms of all the loans that I've originated. There is one loan that I completely lost almost all my money on. That was about 3 years ago on a loan to a guy in Detroit. That was a mess. But through that experience, that's when I decided I'm not lending to anybody out of state anymore. I'm lending to only people who I know within this Hawaii network. Of course, you're good because I met you here, so you're grandfathered in. But so I only deal with the people that I know now, or I only deal with the people that I have a close relationship now, and that's been good because I think the good thing about Hawaii's networks, right, is that if you as the investor, if you get blown up or you default on you just don't pay your borrowers and all that kind of stuff, word travels fast around here, and nobody's going to want to do business with you after that, right? That's also a good incentive for borrowers to take a conservative approach and say, okay, if we can't pay right away, either see if you can extend or have additional financing options available to cover, while like a bridge loan, or even if you have to dig into your own pockets to cover your payouts. I remember sitting on a WNN meetup call probably a year or so ago, and there was one guy who was speaking with us, and he was telling us that he lost over 100,000, and he had to pay people back, and he had to pay it he had to find ways to get cash, to find bridge loans to pay cash that he didn't have.
Wow.
And because, like again in Hawaii, if you have problems, everybody's going to find out at some point. But if you find the problem and you make good on it, nobody's going to fault you for that, because you lived up to your end of the deal at the end.
That totally makes sense. Where, okay, being on the flip side, say if we work with each other, I'm thinking, okay, how can I definitely keep the reputation, or likewise, Chris, how can Chris keep the reputation, even, okay, he has properties, but say the properties go south, that we do have people who graciously share their funds, but yeah, we need to take care of their funds as well. Thank you for that. Um, let's go into through your whole journey. What keeps you motivated? What keeps you motivated to reach peak potential?
As when I gave you my original answer, it was really to quote unquote escape the rat race.
Mm-hmm.
But I think since then, having really thought about things a little bit more and really reflected on just my life in general and the way things are going, I think for me it's more of a personal challenge than anything else. Because when we talk about specifically just real estate investing, it really is a test of your emotional and mental abilities. It really is difficult, right? In that you it's simple, but it's not easy, right? Because you have to analyze deals, and it's not just looking at the numbers, right? Because when you have your inspections, you have to figure out all the repairs you have to do once you purchase the property. Is it even worth it to purchase the property after, let's say you have a foundation issue. Let's say you have an issue with the siding on your single family. Let's say you have a multifamily where you're in a locale where when it gets in the winter time, your pipes are going to burst. Is it really worth it to buy the property based on your numbers, even though you have all these possible factors? And then once, let's say you buy the property, then you have the problems come up. You may have a tenant vacating and your property manager sleeping at the switch, so they come back and they find squatters, right? Are you in a state where you can evict people? If are you in a property that has high winds that can knock over a tree right outside your property and block your tenant from leaving the property to go to work in the morning?
Mm-hmm.
It's all those types of subtle things that I think a lot of people don't think about, and rightfully so that they're not going to think about those types of situations unless it's happened to them. But it's those types of things when it happens that really tests a person. Can they handle that stress of how they're going to deal with it? Can they handle financially out of their reserve? Do they have the reserves to cover those costs, right? So there's a huge discomfort that comes with owning property that I don't think a lot of people realize. I think people just superficially look at it as, okay, this guy owns property, I got to pay him every month. But there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes.
Yes, definitely.
So I do think that owning property or being a real estate investor of any type is a very it can present its own level of stress, and that's what kind of pushes you out of that comfort zone. That's what pushes you to really develop that thick skin. So when I say that it's really a personal challenge, it's really a personal challenge in everything I do, of developing my own mental toughness, if you want to call it that.
That makes total sense. So thank you for sharing. Just being out of your comfort zone, just always being additional every day, and a lot of forward-looking questions versus looking at, even if it's property or anything in your life, like as is, like what can you potentially anticipate or what can you handle? So like great value and answers there, Chris. Let's go into, even though you face challenges like on your day-to-day or your business or your career, even though you face them, what keeps you and stay motivated while facing these challenges? No worries.
Yeah, no, I think when I run into challenging moments, the fact is these are just, I'm not gonna very flippantly say that these are just obstacles. We'll get over it, because a lot of times it is very frustrating, it is very irritating, and it does push us kind of off our center. But when I come across those moments, I just say, look, we gotta do this. We gotta deal with it. Let's just do it. I'll go kicking and screaming about a lot of those challenges, but at the end of it, if we want to keep doing what we're doing, we're going in the direction we're going, or even just to stay the course, we're gonna hit challenges, and we just got to deal with it. We don't have a choice, right?
Well, totally nice perspective. Yeah, definitely it's tough in the moment, but yeah, just facing them head on and just dealing with the challenge itself. So that's a great one. Um, I know this is a segue, but while we were talking about your journey, I noticed you do like to be part of certain boards and committees, but it's just more of a curious question. But um, what insights can you share about your involvement in leadership in the community that may be helpful for our audience as well?
It, it depends. It depends what you're. I always tell people you get out of it what you put into it, right?
Hmm.
You don't put much effort into it, you're not going to get a whole lot. If you really immerse yourself in it, you're going to learn a lot about that particular subject matter. You're going to test your own abilities. You're going to, in terms of um, applying certain thought processes or certain viewpoints, might even help you refine certain viewpoints. I've kind of learned over the years, just in my throughout my working time and different personal and professional relationships, that there's always something that you can learn or adapt or tweak based on whatever that experience is going to be. There's always something somewhere that you're going to find. Now, being involved in the two particular boards and committees that I'm on, for me, it was not only a personal challenge of, okay, give me something else on my plate to do, but it was just, for me, it's almost an outlet, right? Because all I do, pretty almost everything I do is just work and gym. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but even if you take out the gym, all I'm doing is working, right? That's not, you need some type of mental break from that. So okay, or I started adding, say, going to the gym as part of that.
Hmm.
That helped kind of refocus a little bit, kind of not recharge my battery, obviously, but give me something else to just kind of spread out what's on my mind. And then joining these boards and committees and stuff like that, for me, a lot of it is kind of a stress relief, in that I can change. I can now change hats throughout the day depending on what I'm doing or what the conversation is. So, and of course, like I said earlier, it does have that added benefit of, I find it rewarding because I try to put as much effort as I can into those things.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes it just helps with even real estate investing, in the sense that you have to learn how to build your network. You have to learn um, how to not only superficially look at data, look at information, but then also on a deeper level, ask questions about things and really get into the weeds of things. So that's my personal take on that.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Wow, the great answer. Yeah, I'm learning from that as well, like involving leadership and definitely how much effort you put and what you get out of it. So thank you. Let's go ahead and segue into the fun round of questions. What is your favorite food or restaurant?
Hands down, I'll stick to food. I would say my favorite food is Italian food.
Italian food, nice. Do you have any specific dish you like, or in general?
Cacio e pepe is
Nice.
probably one of my I only recently started cooking. I know it's kind of embarrassing to admit, but I recently started cooking. So I cooked. So I did cacio e pepe. I did fettuccine
Uh-huh.
alfredo. Yeah, anything pasta. The pasta dishes I'm with. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Next question. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Aside from buy Bitcoin when it first started, I'm kidding. Um, I would say be flexible. Don't don't have your mind and your heart set on one path. Be open to as many things as possible.
Oh, nice. Like that. Okay, next question. If you could have a deep conversation with any historical figure or fictional character, who would it be?
I would have to say probably George Washington, because I have to wonder, two things I want to know, but I'm very curious to learn about is one, what his thought process was before he was president when he was an army general,
Mhm.
and how he navigated the strife of that time, but also from a political perspective, I'm just very curious if he could have ever imagined while he was our first president what the US has become in the sense of our economic ability, in the sense of how we've developed. And I'd just be very curious if he would have had that foresight or thought of what he started would become, you know?
Nice. Yeah, that'll be definitely an interesting conversation.
Mhm.
Next question. If you could learn a new talent, what would it be?
I think I would like to learn hula.
Hula? Nice.
Yeah, because I kind of went through a few periods of my life where I did a lot of international travel, and
Mm-hmm.
people didn't, not a lot of people knew what Hawaii was or where Hawaii was.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I always thought that it'd be kind of cool to learn hula. That way I could, demonstrate a very little bit about the local culture in those foreign places that I go and visit, because I don't really think that mainland, not a knock on the mainland US, but I don't think they have an entirely distinct culture that Hawaii does. So I just always thought it'd be kind of unique thing to do and then to demonstrate.
Wow, that's awesome. Um, Never know, we'll see Chris on with a halal or at the Mary Monarch in a couple of years. So yeah. Um, so thank you so much, Chris. Would you like to add anything to the audience or any other uh, insights to share?
I'm just gonna kind of cap off my points by saying that you think your life's gonna go in one direction, but it's gonna end up completely different most of the time. Go with it. Just go with it and have fun. Have as much fun as you can, I should say.
Wow, that's a great one. Thank you, Chris. For any opportunities or to reach out to you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Probably through Instagram. So my Instagram, my handle is at Chris_Lum_Lee 2023.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
I'm also on X at Chris_Lum_Lee.
Thank you so much, Chris. Um, Again, thank you, Chris, for your time, for your great value and insights on the Freedom at the Top podcast. Have a great one. Thank you for tuning into Freedom at the Top. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe for more inspiring content. Feel free to leave us a review and share the show. Until next time, keep striving for greatness and aim for freedom at the top.